The Prilorian scientific vessel Nexus 7 hums with anticipation as its crew prepares to investigate a human distress signal. Captain Zara, her iridescent skin pulsing with bioluminescent excitement, stands on the bridge. Her large almond-shaped eyes scan the view screen, searching for signs of the damaged human exploration ship in the uncharted expanse of space before them. "Life signs detected," reports the sensor officer, his tentacle-like fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "One human survivor." Zara's antennae twitch with curiosity. "Bring them aboard immediately. Prepare the medical bay." As the tractor beam locks onto the battered human vessel, Nora, a young Prilorian xenobiologist, rushes to the docking bay. Her heart races at the prospect of studying a living human specimen up close. The airlock hisses open, revealing an unconscious man floating in zero gravity. Medical staff swarm around the human, carefully maneuvering him onto a hover stretcher. Nora catches a glimpse of his face, strong jaw, closed eyes, and skin unmarred by the bioluminescent patterns that adorn her own species. She follows the medical team to the sickbay, her mind already formulating a battery of tests to run on this fascinating creature. Hours later, the human regains consciousness. His eyes flutter open, revealing a striking blue that captures Nora's attention. She leans in, her skin pulsing with a soft, calming light. Where am I?" the human asks, his voice hoarse. "You're aboard the Nexus 7, a Prilorian scientific vessel," Nora responds, her universal translator converting her harmonics into human speech. "I'm Nora, the xenobiologist assigned to your case. Can you tell me your name?" Dylan Johnson," he manages, wincing as he tries to sit up. "I'm a biologist. Our ship, we were exploring an uncharted sector when we were hit by some kind of energy surge." Nora gently eases him back down. "Rest now, Dylan. You're safe here." As Dylan recovers over the next few days, Nora conducts a series of non-invasive tests. She's fascinated by the differences in human physiology, particularly in their reproductive system. Unlike the Prilorians, who reproduce through a complex bioluminescent dance and energy transfer, humans have a more physical process. Word of these differences spreads quickly through the ship. Crew members whisper in the corridors, their skin flickering with patterns of curiosity and disbelief. Captain Zara, concerned about the potential impact of this knowledge on Prilorian society, orders Dylan confined to the medical bay. Nora, however, can't contain her curiosity. Late at night, when the ship's systems are in low-power mode, she accesses Earth's historical and cultural databases. Her eyes widen as she scrolls through information about human mating rituals, sexual practices, and the concept of romantic love. It's so different from anything she's ever known, both shocking and oddly alluring. Meanwhile, Dylan becomes aware of the Prilorians' growing interest in human sexuality. He overhears conversations in the medical bay, catching fragments about evolutionary advantages and efficient reproduction. A plan begins to form in his mind. Perhaps this information could be his ticket to freedom. Unbeknownst to Dylan and Nora, a faction of the crew led by Krell, the ship's security chief, is plotting to extract more detailed information about human mating practices. They believe this knowledge could give their species an edge in the cosmic struggle for survival. As tensions rise aboard the Nexus 7, Captain Zara receives a priority communication from Prilorian High Command. Their orders are clear: change course immediately and bring the human to the Prilorian homeworld for further study. Zara's skin pulses with concern as she contemplates the implications. The secrets of human reproduction could change everything for her people, but at what cost? As she sets a course for home, the stage is set for a clash of cultures, biology, and perhaps even hearts. As the Nexus 7 altered its course for the Prilorian homeworld, a palpable tension settled over the ship. Captain Zara's skin flickered with unease as she contemplated the weight of her orders. In her private quarters, she paced back and forth, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in complex swirls of anxiety and conflict. Meanwhile, Dylan found himself under increasingly stringent security measures. Additional guards now flanked the entrance to the medical bay, their vigilant eyes tracking his every move. The once welcoming environment had transformed into a gilded cage, leaving Dylan feeling more like a prisoner than a guest. Nora, driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and growing affection for Dylan, devised a plan to circumvent these new restrictions. Using her authority as the ship's xenobiologist, she submitted a formal request to transfer Dylan to her personal research lab for more comprehensive studies. Captain Zara, preoccupied with the demands from High Command, approved the request without much scrutiny. The next day, Dylan was escorted to Nora's lab, a sterile yet somehow inviting space filled with holographic displays and alien equipment. As the door slid shut behind them, Nora's skin pulsed with a soft, welcoming glow. "We can speak freely here," she said, her harmonics translating seamlessly. "I've disabled the monitoring systems." Dylan's tense shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you, Nora. I was starting to feel like a lab rat in that medical bay." Over the following days, their time together in the lab became a sanctuary. Between tests and data collection, they shared stories of their vastly different worlds. Dylan described Earth's diverse ecosystems and the intricacies of human relationships, while Nora explained the nuances of Prilorian culture and their unique approach to reproduction. During one session, as Nora examined Dylan's cardiac responses, their conversation drifted to matters of the heart. "So, humans actually experience physical sensations when they are attracted to someone?" Nora asked, her skin shimmering with curiosity. Dylan nodded, a slight flush creeping up his neck. "Yeah, increased heart rate, sweaty palms, butterflies in the stomach. It's all part of the package." Intrigued, Nora leaned closer. "Fascinating. And how do humans typically express these feelings?" "Well, there's verbal communication, of course," Dylan explained. "But physical touch plays a big role too. Things like hugging, holding hands, kissing." Nora's bioluminescent patterns swirled with interest. "Could you demonstrate?" Heart pounding, Dylan slowly reached out and took Nora's hand in his. Her skin was cool and smooth, pulsing gently against his palm. He guided her hand to his chest, letting her feel the rapid beating of his heart. "This is what happens when I'm near you," he said softly. Nora's eyes widened, her own bioluminescence intensifying. She leaned in, mimicking the human gesture she had read about. Their lips met in a gentle, exploratory kiss. The moment was shattered by the sudden hiss of the lab door. They sprang apart as Krell, the ship's security chief, strode in with two guards. "Routine inspection," Krell announced, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. Nora quickly busied herself with her equipment, her skin flickering with nervousness. Dylan feigned interest in a nearby holographic display. After a tense few minutes, Krell and his team left, but the close call left both Dylan and Nora shaken. They realized the need for more discreet communication. Over the next few days, they developed a coded language, combining human idioms with subtle Prilorian bioluminescent patterns. This allowed them to exchange meaningful glances and messages, even under the watchful eyes of the crew. Unbeknownst to them, Krell had not been satisfied with his inspection. Convinced that something was amiss, he recruited a small group of like-minded crew members. Together, they formed a secret faction dedicated to unlocking the secrets of human reproduction, believing it could revolutionize Prilorian society. Krell approached Captain Zara with a proposal. "Captain, I believe we should conduct our own experiments on the human before reaching the homeworld. It would provide valuable preliminary data." Zara, her skin pulsing with uncertainty, reluctantly agreed. "Very well, Krell, but I want full reports and nothing invasive without my explicit approval." As Krell left the captain's quarters, a junior officer loyal to him approached. "Sir, I observed something unusual during my rounds. The xenobiologist, Nora, was engaging in unauthorized physical contact with the human subject." Krell's bioluminescent patterns flared with triumph. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Back in Nora's lab, Dylan and Nora were formulating a plan of their own. "If we can demonstrate the potential benefits of human mating practices to Prilorian evolution," Dylan suggested, "maybe we can negotiate for my release instead of subjecting me to those experiments on your homeworld." Nora nodded, her skin pulsing with commitment. "It's risky, but it might be our only chance. We'll need to present our findings to Captain Zara before we reach the homeworld." As the Nexus 7 continued its journey through the stars, The stage was set for a collision of interests. Dylan and Nora raced against time to compile their research, while Krell plotted to discredit Nora and seize control of the human studies. Captain Zara, caught between her orders and her ethics, faced a decision that could alter the course of Prilorian history. The ship hummed with hidden tensions, each faction preparing to make their move in a high-stakes game of biology, culture, and power. The fate of human Prilorian relations hung in the balance, with Dylan at the center of a storm he never could have imagined when his distress signal was first detected in the vastness of space. The ship's corridors echoed with the sound of heavy footsteps as Krell and his security team marched towards Nora's lab. Their sudden appearance caught Dylan and Nora off guard, interrupting their private study session. "Freeze!" Krell's voice boomed as the door slid open. His team rushed in, weapons drawn and aimed at the startled pair. Dylan instinctively moved to shield Nora, but two guards quickly seized him, their grip unyielding. "What's going on?" he demanded, struggling against their hold. Nora's skin pulsed with alarm, her bioluminescent patterns flashing in rapid succession. "Krell, this is unnecessary. We were simply conducting research." Ignoring her protests, Krell motioned to his team. "Take the human to the high-security holding cell. As for you, xenobiologist Nora, you're under house arrest pending investigation for unauthorized fraternization with the subject." As Dylan was forcibly removed from the lab, he locked eyes with Nora one last time, their shared glance conveying a mix of fear and willpower. The lab door hissed shut, leaving Nora alone with Krell and two remaining guards. "You've compromised our mission," Krell stated coldly, his skin patterns radiating authority and disapproval. "Report to your quarters immediately. You are relieved of your duties until further notice." Nora opened her mouth to object, but thought better of it. She knew arguing now would only make matters worse. With a final defiant flash of her bioluminescence, she left the lab, escorted by the guards to her quarters. Meanwhile, Captain Zara received an urgent communication from Krell. Her antennae twitched with concern as she processed the information. "Call an emergency meeting with the senior staff," she ordered her communications officer. "Now!" In the high-security holding cell, Dylan paced back and forth, his mind racing. The cell was small, barely large enough for him to lie down, with smooth, featureless walls that pulsed with a soft, eerie light. A single energy field served as the door, its low hum a constant reminder of his captivity. As he examined his surroundings, Dylan's scientific mind kicked into gear. He noticed the slight fluctuation in the energy field's intensity during what he assumed were shift changes. The food tray they had provided was made of a material he didn't recognize, but it had a certain flexibility that caught his attention. "Think, Dylan," he muttered to himself. "There's always a way out. You just have to find it." In her quarters, Nora refused to accept defeat. She knew the stakes were too high to simply wait for whatever punishment Krell and his faction had in store. Her eyes darted around the room, taking inventory of the materials at her disposal. Her personal communication device sat on her desk, its screen dark and lifeless. Nora's fingers twitched with inspiration. If she could modify the device to bypass the ship's standard protocols, she might be able to establish a secure channel to Dylan's cell. As she worked, carefully dismantling the device and reconfiguring its internal components, Nora's mind wandered to the kiss she and Dylan had shared. The memory sent a wave of bioluminescence cascading across her skin. She shook her head, refocusing on the task at hand. There would be time for such thoughts later, if they survived this ordeal. In the ship's main conference room, Captain Zara faced her senior staff. Krell stood at attention, his posture rigid and his skin pulsing with self-assurance. "Captain," Krell began, activating a holographic display, "I have evidence of xenobiologist Nora's inappropriate relationship with the human subject." The display flickered to life, showing surveillance footage of Dylan and Nora's interactions, along with data logs of Nora's unauthorized access to Earth's cultural databases. "As you can see," Krell continued, his voice filled with nearly unleashed triumph, "her actions have compromised the integrity of our mission. I propose that I take control of the human research project personally. We cannot allow sentiment to interfere with our scientific objectives." Captain Zara's antennae twitched as she processed the information. Something about this situation didn't sit right with her, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She glanced at Dr. Vex, the ship's chief medical officer, and noticed a flicker of doubt in his bioluminescent patterns. "Thank you, Krell," Zara said, her voice neutral. "I'll take your proposal under advisement. For now, maintain the current security measures. Dismissed." As the senior staff filed out of the conference room, Zara caught Dr. Vex's eye and gave a subtle nod. They needed to talk, away from prying eyes and ears. Back in the holding cell, Dylan had managed to work a piece of the food tray into a crude tool. During the guard's shift change, when the energy field briefly fluctuated, he began working on the cell's locking mechanism. It was slow, painstaking work, but with each attempt, he gained a better understanding of its inner workings. In her quarters, Nora let out a triumphant chirp as her modified communication device sprang to life. She quickly established a secure channel to Dylan's cell, praying he would understand the coded message she was about to send. "Dylan," she whispered into the device, her voice a mix of relief and urgency. "If you can hear me, flash twice." In the dim light of his cell, Dylan's eyes widened as he heard Nora's voice. He quickly flashed the lights in his cell twice, heart pounding with renewed hope. "Good," Nora continued. "Listen carefully. We don't have much time. Krell has taken control, but I think Captain Zara might be having doubts. We need to act fast." As Nora outlined their plan, using their coded language of human idioms and bioluminescent patterns, Dylan felt a surge of admiration for her ingenuity. Together, they might just have a chance of turning this situation around. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the medical bay, Captain Zara and Dr. Vex huddled over a holographic display of human biological data. "I've been reviewing the information we've gathered," Dr. Vex said, his voice low. "Captain, I believe the potential benefits to our society have been greatly exaggerated. The differences in our reproductive methods are significant, but not in the way Krell and his supporters claim." Zara's skin pulsed with concern. "Are you certain, Doctor?" "As certain as I can be without further study," Vex replied, "but I fear that Krell's methods may do more harm than good, both to our potential relations with humans and to our own ethical standards." Captain Zara's antennae drooped slightly as she contemplated the weight of this information. The Nexus 7 was rapidly approaching the outer reaches of the Prilorian star system. Whatever decision she made would have far-reaching consequences for her crew, her people, and potentially for interspecies relations. As the ship hurtled through space, tensions continued to build. Dylan worked tirelessly on his escape plan, Nora prepared her chemical compound, and Krell's faction tightened their grip on the ship's operations. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not only Dylan's fate, but also the future of human-Prilorian relations. The tension aboard the Nexus 7 reached a fever pitch as Dylan and Nora raced against time. With Krell's security team in pursuit, they made a desperate dash for the communication room, their hearts pounding in unison. "Quick, seal the door!" Dylan shouted as they burst into the room. Nora's fingers flew across the control panel, engaging the emergency lockdown protocols. The heavy doors slammed shut with a resounding thud, buying them precious moments. Outside, Krill's voice boomed through the intercom. "Surrender now, and your punishment will be less severe." Dylan and Nora exchanged a determined glance, their coded language of bioluminescent patterns and human idioms flickering between them. They had come too far to give up now. Suddenly, the ship-wide communication system crackled to life. Captain Zara's authoritative voice filled the air. "Attention all crew members. This is Captain Zara. I am ordering Security Chief Krell and his team to stand down immediately." A hush fell over the ship as the captain's words sank in. In the corridor outside the communication room, Krell's team hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Captain Zara continued, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I am taking personal control of this situation. All security personnel are to return to their regular duties. Krell, report to my ready room at once." Inside the communication room, Dylan and Nora exchanged looks of cautious hope. Could this be the break they needed? Moments later, the sound of the captain's override codes being entered echoed through the room. The door slid open, revealing Captain Zara standing alone, her antennae twitching with a mix of authority and concern. "Dylan, Nora," she addressed them calmly, stepping into the room and allowing the doors to close behind her. "I believe we need to talk." Dylan instinctively moved to shield Nora, his body tense. "With all due respect, Captain, why should we trust you now?" Captain Zara's skin pulsed with a pattern that conveyed sincerity. "Because I've come to understand the gravity of my mistake. I've reviewed Dr. Vex's findings and realized the potential benefits of human-Prilorian cooperation far outweigh any short-term gains from exploitation." Nora's bioluminescent patterns flickered with curiosity. "What are you proposing, Captain?" "A compromise," Zara replied, her antennae straightening. "Dylan, in exchange for your freedom and safety, we ask that you voluntarily share information about human reproduction and relationships. This will be done in a controlled, ethical manner, with Nora as the lead xenobiologist." Dylan's eyes widened. He turned to Nora, their secret language allowing them to converse silently. After a brief exchange, he faced the captain again. "We're willing to consider your offer," Dylan said cautiously, "but we have conditions. Nora must be fully reinstated and cleared of all charges, and we want guarantees of our safety and freedom of movement on the ship." Captain Zara nodded, her skin pulsing with agreement. "Granted, Nora, you are hereby reinstated as lead xenobiologist for our new human-Prilorian cultural exchange program." The tension in the room eased palpably. Dylan and Nora relaxed their defensive postures, allowing themselves a moment of relief. "Now," Captain Zara continued, activating a holographic display, "I'm ordering the Nexus 7 to maintain position just outside our star system. I'll be contacting Prilorian High Command to request a diplomatic envoy. This could be the beginning of a new era of interspecies cooperation." As the captain worked, Dylan and Nora found themselves in a dedicated research lab, their equipment humming with potential. They dove into their work with renewed vigor, documenting the intricate differences between human and Prilorian biology. "Look at this," Nora exclaimed, her skin flickering with excitement as she examined a holographic model. "The way human DNA recombines during reproduction, it's fascinating. Our energy transfer method is efficient, but your system allows for so much more genetic diversity." Dylan nodded, equally engrossed in the data. "And your bioluminescent communication could have applications in human medicine we've never even considered." As word of their research spread throughout the ship, curious crew members began to gather outside the lab. Captain Zara, true to her word, had initiated a ship-wide address explaining the new direction of their mission. The majority of the crew now viewed Dylan with a mix of curiosity and cautious optimism. One brave ensign stepped forward, her antennae twitching nervously. "Excuse me, but what exactly is kissing? We've heard rumors, but—" Dylan couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, it's a form of affection that involves pressing lips together. It's actually quite complex, involving various sensory and neurological responses." The ensign's eyes widened, her skin pulsing with a mix of fascination and embarrassment. More questions followed, and soon Dylan and Nora found themselves hosting impromptu lectures on human dating and mating rituals. As they worked and taught, their own relationship deepened. They discovered new ways to express affection that bridged their biological differences. A touch here, a bioluminescent pattern there. Each gesture a step towards a unique, interspecies language of love. Unknown to them, Krell seethed in his quarters, his skin pulsing with anger and resentment. His communication device chirped, signaling an incoming transmission from a hidden faction on the Prilorian homeworld. "The diplomatic envoy is en route," a distorted voice crackled through the device. "Are you prepared to fulfill your part of the plan?" Krell's skin flashed with dedication. "Yes, I'll provide the necessary information. The human must not be allowed to corrupt our society." As the Nexus 7 waited for the arrival of the diplomatic envoy, the atmosphere aboard the ship buzzed with anticipation. Dylan and Nora's research continued to yield promising results, particularly in the realm of Prilorian fertility enhancement. Captain Zara stood on the bridge, her antenna twitching as she surveyed the star-filled expanse before her. A sense of unease nagged at her. Something was coming, something that would test the newfound alliance between humans and Prilorians to its very core. Despite her outward composure, Captain Zara's skin rippled with unease as she watched the incoming transmission from the approaching diplomatic envoy. Suddenly, the bridge erupted into chaos. The envoy's signal cut out abruptly, replaced by static and garbled distress calls. Zara's antennae twitched frantically as she processed the flood of incoming data. "Captain!" the communications officer shouted, his bioluminescent patterns flashing urgency. "The envoy ship is under attack. We've lost all contact." Zara's decision was instantaneous. "All hands to battle stations. Set an intercept course, maximum speed." As the Nexus 7 surged towards the last known coordinates of the diplomatic vessel, Dylan and Nora rushed to the bridge. They arrived just as Zara was assembling a rescue team. "Dylan, Nora, we need you on this mission," Zara said, her skin pulsing with purpose. "Dr. Vex, you're with us too. We don't know what we're walking into, but your skills may be crucial." The team boarded a shuttle and sped towards the disabled envoy ship. As they approached, the extent of the damage became clear. The once sleek vessel now drifted listlessly, its engines dark and hull scarred by weapons fire. "Life signs?" Dylan asked, peering through the shuttle's viewport. Dr. Vex studied his scanner, his antennae drooping. "Multiple signatures, but they're erratic. We need to hurry." The shuttle docked with a metallic clang, and the rescue team moved swiftly into the envoy ship. The corridors were dim, emergency lights casting an eerie glow. As they advanced, they encountered the first of the hijackers. Dylan reacted on instinct. He ducked under a Prylorian attacker's swing, using the alien's momentum against him. With a quick series of strikes, he disarmed and disabled the hijacker, leaving him unconscious on the deck. Nora stared in amazement. "Dylan, how did you—" "Later," he replied, breathing heavily. "We need to keep moving." As they pressed deeper into the ship, they encountered more resistance. Nora quickly adapted, using her bioluminescent abilities to create disorienting patterns of light. The hijackers, their eyes evolved for different light conditions, found themselves momentarily blinded and confused. Working in tandem, Dylan and Nora cleared a path for the rest of the team. Their movements became a synchronized dance of human agility and Prylorian biomanipulation. They fought their way to the ship's main laboratory, where they made a shocking discovery. The room was filled with experimental equipment, much of it clearly adapted from stolen human research data. They were trying to replicate human reproductive methods, Dr. Vex said, his voice tight with disgust. "This goes beyond mere scientific curiosity. It's an obsession." As they continued their search, they found the hostage diplomats locked in a cargo hold. Among them was Ambassador Lyra, her antennae perking up at the sight of the rescue team. "Thank the stars," she said, her skin flickering with relief. "We feared the worst when—" Her words were cut short by the ship-wide communication system crackling to life. Krell's voice, tinged with triumph, filled the air. "Attention, Nexus 7 crew. I am now in control of the ship. Captain Zara's command has been revoked. To the radical faction aboard the envoy, I offer you Dylan and all human research data in exchange for my rightful place among you." Dylan's fist clenched. "We need to get back to the Nexus 7, now!" But as they raced back to their shuttle, they realized they were trapped. The radical faction was closing in from one side, while Krell's mutineers controlled their only escape route. Dylan's mind raced. He turned to Ambassador Lyra. "Do you have any way to override Krell's control of the Nexus 7? Lyra's eyes widened. "Yes, emergency override codes, but we'd need to get close enough to use them." Dylan nodded, a plan forming. "The envoy's escape pods. If we can launch a surprise attack from multiple vectors, we might catch Krell off guard." As the team quickly prepared for their daring assault, Dylan couldn't help but feel a mix of adrenaline and apprehension. The next few minutes would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of human-Prylorian relations. They boarded the escape pods, each one carrying a mix of rescued diplomats and security personnel. As they ejected from the envoy ship and streaked towards the Nexus 7, Dylan took a deep breath. He glanced at Nora, her bioluminescent patterns conveying a complex mix of emotions. "Ready?" he asked. Nora's skin pulsed with affirmation. "Let's take back our ship." The escape pods rocketed towards the Nexus 7, silent and swift against the backdrop of stars. As they closed in, Ambassador Lyra transmitted the override codes, disabling the ship's defensive systems. With a series of muffled thuds, the pods latched onto the Nexus 7's hull. Dylan and Nora led the charge through a maintenance airlock, their makeshift assault team fanning out behind them. "We need to retake key systems," Dylan said, his voice low and urgent. "Engineering, life support, and the bridge. Nora, can you guide a team to engineering?" Nora nodded, her skin flickering with commitment. As she led her group down one corridor, Dylan headed towards the bridge with the remaining forces. The ship's corridors became a battlefield. Dylan used every trick he had learned about Prylorian physiology, guiding the loyal security forces in tactics that left Krell's mutineers disoriented and outmaneuvered. Meanwhile, Nora reached the engineering section. Using her knowledge of Prylorian biology, she quickly synthesized a non-lethal incapacitating agent. With precise bursts of light and sound, she and her team systematically neutralized the mutineers, regaining control of the ship's vital systems. As Dylan's team fought their way towards the bridge, the ship shuddered. Through the viewport, he saw a fleet of Prylorian warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, their weapons charged and ready. Time was running out. With a final push, Dylan's team breached the bridge. He found himself face-to-face with Krell, whose skin pulsed with rage and desperation. "It's over, Krell," Dylan said, his body tense and ready for action. Krell's antenna twitched violently. "You think you've won? You have no idea what forces you're dealing with, human?" With a roar, Krell lunged at Dylan. The two grappled fiercely, a clash of human strength and Prylorian bioluminescent defenses. Dylan found himself hard-pressed, Krell's body emitting disorienting flashes of light. But Dylan adapted quickly. He closed his eyes, relying on touch and sound to guide his movements. With a series of quick, powerful strikes, he forced Krell back. As they fought, the bridge came alive with activity. Loyal crew members retook their stations, working frantically to re-establish control and communicate with the incoming Prylorian fleet. Dylan and Krell's battle raged on, a microcosm of the larger conflict between cooperation and exploitation. With each exchange, the fate of two species hung in the balance. Balance. With a final surge of strength, Dylan twisted his body, using Krell's momentum against him. The Prylorian security chief stumbled, caught off guard by the human's unexpected maneuver. Seizing the opportunity, Dylan struck with precision. His fist connected with a vulnerable point on Krell's neck, a weakness he had learned from his studies of Prylorian physiology. Krell's eyes widened in shock, his bioluminescent patterns flickering erratically before fading as he slumped to the ground, unconscious. Dylan stood over his fallen opponent, breathing heavily. The bridge fell silent for a moment, the crew stunned by the sudden end to the fierce confrontation. Nora's voice crackled over the comm system, breaking the tension. "Engineering secured. All systems back under our control." Captain Zara stepped forward, her antenna twitching with authority. "Excellent work, everyone. Security team, take Krell and his co-conspirators to the brig. I want them under constant surveillance." As the unconscious Krell was dragged away, Zara turned to Dylan. "Your actions today have saved this ship and potentially the future of human-Prylorian relations. Well done." Dylan nodded, still catching his breath. "Thank you, Captain. But we're not out of danger yet. The Prylorian fleet—" "Leave that to me," Ambassador Lyra interjected, her skin pulsing with drive. She moved to the communications array, her fingers dancing over the controls. "This is Ambassador Lyra to the Prylorian fleet. Stand down immediately. The situation aboard the Nexus 7 has been dedicationed." Tense minutes passed as they waited for a response. Finally, the view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of a Prylorian fleet commander. "Ambassador, explain yourself," the commander demanded, his antennae quivering with suspicion. Lyra launched into a concise but thorough explanation of recent events, emphasizing the crucial role played by Dylan and the loyal Nexus 7 crew in thwarting the radical faction's plan. As she spoke, Dylan felt a presence at his side. He turned to see Nora, her skin glowing with a mix of relief and excitement. Without a word, she took his hand, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that bridged their biological differences. The Prylorian commander listened intently, his expression gradually softening. When Lyra finished, he nodded slowly. "Very well, Ambassador. We will stand down. but the High Command will require a full briefing on these events. Of course, Lyra agreed, and I have a proposal that I believe will interest them greatly. As the communication ended, Captain Zara addressed the bridge crew. Well done, everyone. We've averted a crisis, but our work is just getting started. I want full damage reports and a security sweep of the entire ship. She turned to Dylan and Nora. As for you two, I believe the ambassador has something to discuss with you. Lyra approached them, her skin shimmering with an idea taking shape. Your actions today have demonstrated the incredible potential of human Prilorian cooperation. I believe it's time we take this collaboration to the next level. She outlined her proposal for a joint human Prilorian research station, her enthusiasm growing with each word. And I want you both to lead this initiative. Your unique partnership, your combined knowledge, you're the perfect candidates to bridge our two species. Dylan and Nora exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. The challenges ahead were daunting, but the possibilities were exhilarating. We accept, Dylan said, speaking for both of them. In the days that followed, the Nexus 7 was a hive of activity. As they made preparations for their new assignment, Dylan and Nora found themselves at the center of attention. Crew members sought them out, eager to learn more about their experiences and the potential for human Prilorian collaboration. The ship's course was altered, setting a path for a neutral space station called Harmony Point. As they traveled, Dylan and Nora threw themselves into planning for the joint research project. They spent long hours in the lab, refining their ideas and preparing for the challenges ahead. One evening, as they worked late into the night shift, Nora paused in her analysis of some data. Her skin rippled with a pattern Dylan had come to recognize as uncertainty. Dylan, she said, her voice soft, are you worried about what we're getting into? The scrutiny we'll be under? The pressure to succeed? Dylan set down his tablet, considering her words. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous. But think about what we've already accomplished together. This is our chance to make a real difference. Nora's bioluminescence brightened, her anxiety fading. You're right, and at least we'll face it together. As Harmony Point grew larger in the view screen, Dylan felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The station loomed before them, a symbol of the unknown future they were about to step into. He glanced at Nora standing beside him on the observation deck, her skin glowing with excitement. Ready for our next adventure? He asked. Nora's hand found his, her touch sending a familiar tingle through his skin. With you, always. The Nexus 7 docked with Harmony Point, the airlocks engaging with a metallic thunk. As the door slid open, Dylan and Nora stood at the threshold of a new chapter in human Prilorian relations, unaware of the challenges and discoveries that awaited them on the other side. The airlock cycled open, revealing the bustling interior of Harmony Point. Dylan and Nora stepped forward, ready to embark on their new adventure. Their first weeks at the station were a whirlwind of activity. They set up their joint laboratory, collaborated with other researchers, and began laying the groundwork for their ambitious projects. The station hummed with the energy of scientific discovery and interspecies cooperation. But beneath the surface of progress, tensions simmered. Dylan noticed subtle signs of unease among some of the Prilorian staff, while Nora picked up on whispered conversations that fell silent when humans approached. They shared their concerns privately, agreeing to remain vigilant. Their instincts proved correct. On what began as a routine day, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed as the life support systems began to fail. Emergency Protocol Alpha, a computerized voice announced. Oxygen levels critical. All personnel report to designated safe zones immediately. Dylan and Nora exchanged a quick glance before springing into action. They had drilled for this scenario, but the real thing was infinitely more chaotic. I'll coordinate the East Wing evacuation, Dylan shouted over the din. You take the West. Meet at Control Center Beta. Nora's skin pulsed in agreement as they split up. Dylan raced down corridors, guiding panicked researchers towards the emergency shelters. He saw fear in the eyes of humans and Prilorians alike as the reality of their situation set in. This way, he called, ushering a group of scientists into a shelter. Seal the door behind you and wait for the all-clear signal. As he worked, Dylan's mind raced. This was no accident. The systematic failure of multiple systems pointed to sabotage. But who? And why now? He caught glimpses of unfamiliar faces among the crowd, staff members he didn't recognize. One Prilorian in particular caught his attention. The being's bioluminescent patterns seemed off somehow, not quite matching the panicked flashes of those around him. Dylan filed the observation away, focusing on the immediate crisis. He cleared the last lab in his sector and headed for the rendezvous point. Nora was already there when he arrived, her skin flickering with agitation. Dylan, something's wrong. This isn't a malfunction. I saw... Infiltrators, Dylan finished. I know. I spotted them too. They quickly shared their observations with the security team. Captain Zara's face appeared on a nearby screen, her antennae twitching with concern. We've received your distress call, she said. The Nexus 7 is en route, along with a joint human-Prelorian task force. Hold out as long as you can. Dylan nodded grimly. We'll do our best, Captain, but we need a way to identify the infiltrators before they can do more damage. Nora's skin suddenly pulsed with inspiration. I have an idea. Dylan, remember our work on comparative physiology? Understanding dawned on Dylan's face. The thermal variance between pure Prilorians and those with genetic modifications. They quickly explained their plan to the security team. Using components from their lab in the station's medical bay, they cobbled together a makeshift scanner. It was crude, but it could detect the subtle differences in body temperature and bioluminescent patterns that set the radical faction members apart. Armed with their new tool, Dylan and Nora led a sweep of the station. They moved cautiously through the corridors, scanning each person they encountered. Most checked out clean, but every so often the scanner would ping, revealing an infiltrator in their midst. As they approached the main data core, they hit the jackpot. A group of disguised radicals was attempting to access the station's most sensitive information. Stop right there, Dylan shouted, drawing his stun weapon. The infiltrators whirled, their cover blown. One of them, a tall Prilorian with jagged bioluminescent patterns, stepped forward. So the human pet has some tricks, he sneered, but you're too late. We already have what we came for. Nora's skin flashed with anger at the insult, but she kept her voice steady. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Surrender now, and we can commitment this peacefully. The leader laughed, a harsh sound that sent chills down Dylan's spine. Peace? There can be no peace while our species mix. You two are an abomination, a threat to the purity of our race. He raised a device, his finger hovering over a button. One press and this station becomes a tomb. Unless... Dylan tensed, sensing the coming demand. Unless what? Unless you come with us, human, the leader said, his eyes gleaming with fanatical light. Your genome holds the key to our research. Come willingly, and we'll spare the others. Dylan's mind raced. He glanced at Nora, seeing the fear and persistence in her bioluminescent patterns. They had prepared for this possibility, discussed it in hushed tones late at night. Now, the moment had arrived. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. All right, he said, lowering his weapon. I'll go with you. But first, release the hostages and give me your word that you won't harm anyone else on this station. The leader considered for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. You have more value to us alive than these others do, dead. As Dylan stepped forward, Nora's hand brushed against his, a fleeting touch that conveyed volumes. To the infiltrators, it looked like a simple farewell. In reality, it activated the subdermal communicator they had developed together, allowing them to stay in contact no matter what happened next. Dylan allowed himself to be led away, his heart pounding, but his determination firm. As he disappeared down the corridor with his captors, Nora turned to the security team, her skin pulsing with persistence. All right, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. Let's end this. We have work to do. We have work to finish. With new hope, Nora and the security team worked tirelessly to secure the station and root out any remaining infiltrators. Hours later, as the last of the radical faction members were apprehended, Nora received a pulse through her subdermal communicator. Dylan was safe and the Nexus 7 had arrived with reinforcements. In the days that followed, Harmony Point buzzed with activity as repairs were made and security protocols were overhauled. Dylan and Nora threw themselves back into their work, their recent ordeal only strengthening their persistence to bridge the gap between their species. Weeks turned into months, and their research began to yield unprecedented results. Late one night, as they pored over data in their lab, Nora's skin suddenly pulsed with an intense, vibrant pattern Dylan had never seen before. "Dylan," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "Look at this." He leaned in, studying the holographic display. His eyes widened as he realized the implications of what he was seeing. "Is that—" Nora nodded, her bioluminescence brightening. "A viable human Prilorian hybrid embryo. We've done it, Dylan. We've proven it's possible." The news of their breakthrough spread rapidly through Harmony Point and beyond. Within days, it seemed the entire galaxy was abuzz with discussion about the implications of their discovery. Human and Prilorian societies alike were rocked by the revelation, sparking intense debates about the future of both species. As the furor grew, Dylan and Nora found themselves at the center of a storm. They were inundated with messages from curious colleagues, concerned officials, and even a few death threats from extremists who viewed their work as an abomination. One evening, as they sat in their quarters discussing the day's events, Dylan took Nora's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "What if we took this a step further?" Nora's skin rippled with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Dylan took a deep breath. "What if we tried for a child of our own? Naturally, I mean." Nora's bioluminescence flared with surprise, then settled into a warm, pulsing glow. "You want to have a baby? With me?" "More than anything," Dylan replied, squeezing her hand. "We've proven it's possible in the lab. Now let's show the galaxy it can happen in real life." The decision to attempt natural conception was not made lightly. They spent weeks discussing the implications, both personal and societal. When they finally announced their intention, the reaction was mixed. Some hailed them as visionaries, while others decried their choice as reckless and unnatural. But with the support of key figures like Captain Zara and Ambassador Lyra, Dylan and Nora pressed forward. They began documenting their journey, combining intimate personal experiences with rigorous scientific observations. Their nights together became a beautiful fusion of human and Prilorian mating rituals. Dylan's gentle caresses intermingled with Nora's dazzling bioluminescent displays, creating a unique dance of light and touch. Each encounter was filled with tenderness, passion, and the thrill of scientific discovery. Months passed and hope began to fade, but then one morning Nora's skin began to pulse with an unfamiliar pattern. A quick medical scan confirmed what they had scarcely dared to hope for. She was pregnant. The news spread like wildfire. Overnight, Dylan and Nora became the most famous couple in the galaxy. As Nora's pregnancy progressed, they worked closely with a team of xenobiologists, pioneering new medical techniques to ensure the health of their unprecedented child. The day Nora went into labor, Harmony Point held its collective breath. After hours of intense contractions and bioluminescent pulses that lit up the entire medical bay, a cry pierced the air. Aurora, the galaxy's first human Prilorian child, had been born. She was a marvel, a perfect blend of both species. Her tiny body was human in shape, but her skin glowed softly, pulsing in time with her emotions. As Dylan held his daughter for the first time, he was struck by the enormity of what they had accomplished. Aurora's birth marked the beginning of a new era. Over the next 5 years, Harmony Point transformed into a thriving interspecies community. Dylan and Nora continued their research while raising their spirited young daughter, watching with pride as she grew into a living symbol of unity between their peoples. On Aurora's 5th birthday, Harmony Point hosted a grand celebration. As Dylan and Nora stood hand in hand, their bioluminescent rings glowing brightly, they watched their daughter play with a mixed group of human and Prilorian children. The sight filled them with hope for the future they were building, a future where the boundaries between species faded away, replaced by understanding and harmony. As the celebration wound down, Dylan and Nora retreated to their quarters with a sleepy Aurora. They tucked her into bed, marveling at the soft glow of her skin in the darkness. As they shared a tender kiss, their bodies illuminated by Nora's bioluminescence, they knew their journey was far from finished. The galaxy was changing, and they were at the forefront of that change, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.